Hello and welcome to Talk About Jazz. This is Doug Hall, and I'm your host today. And our musical guest is Tammy McCann, who is a Chicago-based gospel and jazz vocalist. Welcome, Tammy.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, thank you. We're so happy to have you here today, and we're going to have an opportunity for 30 minutes to talk about your background, your musical career and inspiration, and we're going to focus on your latest release, Do I Move You, from 2023. I'm just going to briefly review a summary of your resume, and obviously it doesn't cover your entire musical career, but I believe that audiences need to be aware of some foundation and background with our musical guests. Miss McCann has been performing for over 30 years in venues across the world, which include both Israel and Italy. She began her Chicago-based singing career in the 1990s as a gospel and opera performer, touring Europe with bands including Wonderbrass and the Voices of Glory. Miss McCann trained to be an opera singer starting in high school, but fell in love with jazz while at college. Most recently, in 2019, she debuted a tribute to the legendary gospel singer, Mahalia Jackson, in the musical production Yes, Mahalia, which was performed in 2022 at the Musical Institute of Chicago, amongst other locations. Her latest release is Do I Move You from 2023, which is a fusion of her musical passions. And we are going to have an opportunity to listen to the title cut and then another cut from that same release. I do want to share a quote directly from Tammy that I found on a NPR station interview at WAMU. She spoke of the Do I Move You 2023 release as, quote, "This album is all of the genres I have poured myself into over the years. It's my musical marinade." So again, thank you for being here with us today, Tammy. And as you know, we have a listening portion of our interview, so I think we'll segue into that now.
Okay.
If you'd like to set up each release, we're going to listen to a snippet, probably 2 minutes, of Do I Move You. Is there any background or inspirational part that you want to share with us, or shall we listen to it first?
Well, just first of all, Doug, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this. This is super exciting. Do I Move You was actually came by inspiration, divine inspiration, I'd say. Fareed Haq, who was my arranger and producing partner, he and I were going back and forth, what should we name the record? We came up with so many different names. We were thinking, Southside Folktales or something like that. We were all over the place. I was driving home and I was listening to WBEZ here in Chicago. And the song came on, Do I Move You? And I was like, oh, how amazing. What a great song. And I called the station and I said, who sings this song? And they told me it was Nina Simone. And I said, that's it. That's what I want to do. I want this music to move people. And it was the perfect song. So it became the title record. And 3 days later, I was recording it in the studio.
Wow. Great story background. Thank you. And Simone, such an important and powerful and emotional singer in all the directions in her social and political and oppression voiced, fearlessly voiced defiance. Good. Well, that's wonderful. We'll have a listen then.
Do I move you? Are you willing? Do I groove you? Is it thrilling? Do I soothe you? Tell the truth now. Do I move you? Are you losing? Are you ready for this action? Does it give you satisfaction? Are you hip now to what I'm saying? If you are, then let's start swaying. The answer better be yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. That pleases me.
Wow, Tammy, that really just soars and takes you to a very authentic place as you sing with great authenticity and honesty in that song. It comes across as a very powerful blues number. I mean, it's very sultry, but what I try to have learned in just basic music theory is you've got this bar to live in, right? You've got a bar, and then you've got another bar, and you have to you deliver within that space what range you want to say and what you want to say before you go to the next chord, right? And I love listening to that package because it's thought out, obviously, and it comes through that this wasn't just, you know, whatever I feel comes out. It's your voice changes and rises and lowers, and all those articulations occur within those different bars. So,
Thank you for your in-depth observation. I find, and analysis. I find that when dealing with Black vocality, often there's this perception of just effortless feeling rather than, precise planning.
right.
And it actually is a combination of both.
Yes. Right.
And for that song, it played so many roles in the record. It played for the overall theme, which was, we had been in such emotional isolation. We weren't just sequestered from each other physically, but also emotionally.
Right.
And I really wanted to create music and soundscapes that pulled people in and that made them feel something, right? And literally.
Right.
And I wanted the exchange, the call and response. So that's why it's a question. Do I move you?
Right. Right.
And I want that reaction. I want that, answer in the affirmative.
Right.
So it was, COVID was such, excuse me, COVID was such a trying time. It took away a lot from musicians, but I felt that it gave me just as much as it took away. I was given the opportunity to really delve deep into myself and create some of the most personal music that I have ever. This would be my 6th record.
Okay. Yeah. Again, with interviewing other musicians on my podcast, both really college students and then professional recording musicians such as yourself, they've all talked about, or somehow the interview segued into the COVID period. And they reflected in a lot of ways the way you have. They looked at the negative and then they looked at the unexpected positive.
Yeah.
And one of them actually composed a song that was based on the isolation of COVID. And that was a Berkeley College student. And so that was a total surprise to me. So we played that. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. Again, particularly within the jazz community and musicians in general that depend on an audience and depend on performing for income and for their own sustenance emotionally and financially, that it just like the wall went up.
Yes.
But you were productive, as were many others, and that's wonderful. I went on to listen to Feeling Good, and I didn't realize that Nina Simone had also composed Do I Move You, though I should have known that. But Both of them are so.
Okay, it's okay. I didn't know it either.
So.
And I must say also that the through line of Nina Simone through this record was completely unplanned.
Wow,
I mean,
that's amazing.
You know, it was, for me, it was the story that the song was telling.
Yes.
And how I felt that I could use it as a vehicle,
yes,
to express the story. And
right.
so it was kind of an afterthought when I sat back and I looked at the set list, and I'm like, wow, I have, 3 Nina Simone songs on here, but they all inhabit their own space in the storytelling. And again, it's a testament to her that she's always so present and constant when you need to tell a story or express yourself musically.
Yes.
And the 3 songs are so vastly different from each other.
Right. Well, let's segue into Feeling Good, and we're going to play the entire song, as it is only about 3 minutes, and I don't feel it's complete without hearing you manage this whole song with your vocals.
Feeling Good, actually, there's a story about that as well. It wasn't even supposed to be on the album.
Okay.
I felt like I hit a wall.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I musically was looking for a way to kind of pull myself out of the frustration that I was feeling musically. Mm-hmm. And my bass player and I had done Feeling Good for something else, for another event. And I said, I'm looking for something that taps into Tomorrow Isn't Promised. I'm looking for something that, is going to fill me up with, hope and fortitude that, everything's going to be okay. Right. I feel ready to seize the day and be appreciative and be thankful every day. And so we recorded this, just bass and voice, just him and me kind of carrying each other along. And then, of course, John Clayton came in and produced it and made it so special.
Okay. All right, wonderful. So let's listen to this composition and enjoy it in its entirety.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life, and I'm feeling good. Fish in the sea, you know how I feel. River running free, you know how I feel. Blossoming tree, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, a new day, a new life. I'm feeling good, good, good. Dragonfly out in the sun, you know what I mean. Butterflies having fun, you know what I mean. Sleep in peace till the day is done, that's what I mean. This old world is a new world and a bold world for me. Stars in the sky, a new day, a new life. Oh, it's a new dawn, a new day, a new life. Yeah, it's a new dawn, a new day, a new life, and I'm feeling good.
Wow. Sends tingles up the spine. So that ending, particularly as you deliver, it's such a rejoicement. And there's such range and swooping and soaring in your voice, and in a sense, re-saying that refrain or that reminder. It's a new day, and wake up. It's a new day.
Yes.
There's another chance. There's another way. It's a new day. And obviously, at later in our interview, I will touch on your gospel background, but clearly there's a gospel-like message there as well. So really very uplifting, and very special, particularly the way you close that with your...
I also like I like the otherness of it. There's this constant, even when I heard reimaginings of the tune, they all kind of stay within her structure.
Yes.
And I really wanted to step away from that, and
Yes.
create something that was wholly different and authentic to me,
Yes.
So I felt like we hit the mark. That was
Yes.
John coming up with that groove. I just wanted to do something that was, kind of Afro-Cuban, not that straight da-da-ba-da. I wanted to do something more, what is the word I'm looking for? Like I said, organic and really connect. That's why I was just voice and bass. I wanted it to be as pure as possible.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that, because the first emotional response I have to is the bass line coming in. And it's that stand-up bass has that like tactile feel to it. I mean, you see the hand, at least I do visually, and climbing up the fret and doing its work, I mean, it has that, as you say, organic feel to it. There's no violins back there. There's no mass production. We are hearing the actual instrument and then the vocalist.
You're very naked. Yeah. You're very naked in front of the audience, and there's nothing that can protect you, and nothing that can hide, your mistakes. Right. And so I like being in that space. Sure. I like being, bare in front of the audience in that way. And also, don't tell anybody, but I'm a closet bass player. I'm learning how to play.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. That always adds another component. So I see. Okay. Well, look, that was a wonderful opportunity to hear the whole song, Feeling Good. And then also prior to that, Do I Move You, which is Tammy McCann's, the title of her 2023 release. Just moving into some general questions, which, you can expand upon in any way you wish to. I thought I would start with looking at, obviously, your original background in high school, where you were trained as an opera singer, and then your passion and love, obviously, for gospel music. And then thinking in terms of a transition to jazz, how would you say all those components come together? Do they in a jazz performance or a song?
Well, actually, I mean, it's interesting how my biography kind of lays out on its face. The gospel music was my upbringing.
That was your upbringing.
So that's the foundation.
That's the foundation.
That's the foundation of my musical upbringing. Upon that, my mother laid Barbra Streisand and Judy Garland. Oh. And so I started out in life in my youth with this like very multifaceted musical experiences. When I went to high school, I had the sheer blessing to attend a high school with the Reverend Dr. Lena McLean as my vocal instructor, as our choir teacher and music teacher. And she essentially created a master class, a master's level class for us children when it came to performing music. The role that she chose for me was classical music. She said, you know, you're going to be the next Leontine Price. And I was like, I thought I was thinking I'd be the next Shaka Khan. And she was like, no, that's not going to happen. And so back then, you know, you just said, yes, ma'am. And you did what you were told. So that's what I did. And very lackluster initially because I had no point of reference. But I was competitive. Right. And so she put me in competition and I got there was, you know, good, excellent, superior. And so I got excellent. And I was like, I wasn't excited about it. So I was like, if I really tried, this is something that I could be good at. Well, that was my freshman year. My sophomore year, I did my first opera, Cavalleria Rusticana by Mascagni. And I had the lead role, Santuzza. Miss McLean crafted my voice to be an apparatus for classical projection. And I sang in Italian, French, German, Latin, and got a scholarship to college for classical voice. And it was my everything. It was my morning, noon, and night. And I went to this small Baptist college in Virginia Union University. And I had this experience of being kind of a big fish in a small pond, and was exposed to so many different forms of music, but none of them were jazz. My parents were not jazz people. So one day I was walking down the practice room hallway, and I heard this music. This young man was playing piano, and I knocked on the door. I thought it was experimental classical music. I'd never heard it before. And I said, what is that? You know, and he said, oh, that's a Thelonious Monk. I said, who is Thelonious Monk? And he looked at me like I had three heads, and the song was Round Midnight. Oh, yes. Now, for those of us that are in the know, we know the song, right? So you have to realize this was a 19-year-old kid, obviously butchering the song, right? So, but the fact that it had such a presence in its most rudimentary form that it completely took me, all I could think of was, where was it? How do I find it? At the time, I didn't know it was straight ahead, you know, jazz. And so went back home, went from club to club, and found it in the hands of Von and George Freeman. And I became just laser focused and transformed my life. And I'm so blessed that the patience that Mr. Freeman, Vansky, as we lovingly called him, had for me, because that physiological shift from classical to jazz was excruciating. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done, to be in this space and place authentically. Now, I also need to say that when you do classical music, all other music must be cast aside. So Miss McLean really suppressed any gospel influence out of me to do the classical. And so in my mind, I'm switching over to the next genre, which is jazz. So I suppressed classical and then suppressed gospel, and I wanted to be authentic. So this is how you authentically do this. And that was my goal. Unbeknownst to me, I was also suppressing my marinade, all the things that made me individual, you know. And so here I am with Do I Move You, my 6th record. And through COVID, through that time to myself, I was able to find myself in musically, and realize that, yes, there is unbeknownst to me, it had always peaked out.
Right. Yes.
This amazing gentleman, Mr. Howard Reich. He's a journalist here in Chicago, and he wrote this comment about me, how I was able to bring jazz and gospel and classical all into one, framework, one song. And I'd never thought of that before, how just naturally these influences would just come out when I felt that they were needed vocally to express something. Right. And so my job was to then harness that, hold on to it, and say that it was okay. Right. It was okay for the blues to shine through. It was okay for gospel to shine through, right, along with the classical and the jazz, to create a sound that was my own, that was my musical marinade.
Right. Well, I think that's,
I hope I answered the question.
You did, actually, and you tied it up very well, because that, in a sense, was the question I was starting with. And seeing as you have all those different backgrounds and training, how is it that comes through in a song, but it's there and you have that ability, and if one is an somewhat educated ear, one can hear the differences, yes, and that comes through.
You can hear the layers, yeah, and the different and the shifts. And for me, it's very I don't think about it like, oh, I'm going to do classical here, I'm going to do gospel here. It just shows itself. Right.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, as somebody who wants to educate himself continually further in the jazz vein, I go back to different players to get a distinction in what people are telling me about, and that's part of it too, is to hear the difference from each musician and their period, which obviously flows over into the next. So I thought I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the, quote, Chicago sound, as you and I briefly talked about earlier when we spoke over the phone. The education, the background, your understanding of that movement, what they call now the Great Migration out of the South, of African Americans, and a lot of them going to New York City and a lot of them going to Chicago. And of course, now we know of all the very famous and important musicians that found themselves in both those cities. How would you say you personally reflect on Chicago and its musical sound?
I believe that the Chicago sound is so set apart, and not just because I say so. Okay. The musicians say so.
Right. Okay.
Vaughn and George Freeman and their brother Bruz were the rhythm section for Charlie Parker.
Oh,
so
okay.
Charlie Parker would come to Chicago and play with these brothers, right? And the Great Migration affected Chicago in a particular way. Chicago jazz is unlike New York jazz or unlike California jazz. It is a mixture of blues and gospel and the juke joint, of the South. And
right.
it's a crisp sound that it when you hear it. It's
right.
unlike any place else. And so what I had to come to love about myself is that I had that in me the whole time. I was just trying to sequester it. I was trying to push it away.
Right.
I felt like it was inauthentic and had no place in the jazz singer that I was trying to be.
Right.
And what I realized is that I was suppressing my own identity, And that the music of Chicago, the jazz of Chicago is set apart, and everybody that hears it knows it.
Yeah. Great answer. Thank you. Because that gets thrown around a lot, and I don't think some people understand there is a distinction. It's not just a phrase. So unfortunately, running out of time, we've had a wonderful conversation and felt that certainly listening to those two cuts of yours really was such a strong reflection of your singing voice and also your phrasing and your emotional approach to expressing yourself with your voice. I wanted to give you an opportunity to tell us whether or not there's any upcoming performances or recordings. Obviously, we've talked about your release, Do I Move You? from 2023, and we listened to 2 cuts on our podcast today. Any upcoming performances or recordings that you want to let us know about?
Well, to keep up with me, you guys can go to TammyMcCann.com.
Oh, okay, good.
This summer is going to be interesting. I'm actually going on a writing trip. I'm going to Italy.
Oh, okay.
And to have not a COVID moment, but a creative moment where I can, sit down and think about the next record and do some writing.
Sure.
I'm also going to be, if you go to Swing University for Jazz at Lincoln Center, I'll be teaching a class every Monday, starting on I believe it's the 15th of July, on Aretha Franklin as a storyteller and her career through her music.
Okay.
Then I will be with Christian McBride. Such an amazing blessing. He reached out to me to be the vocal coach for his jazz camp, Jazz House Kids.
Wow.
So I'll be doing that the beginning of August.
Okay.
And then here in Chicago, we will be at the Driehaus Museum's new theater. We'll be christening that with my concert, Barbara, Judy, and Me.
Wow.
My tribute to Barbara Streisand and Judy Garland. In the fall, we'll be at the National Museum of, the Take Two.
Sure.
In October, we'll be at the National Underground Railroad Museum in Cincinnati.
Yes,
performing Yes, Mahalia.
Oh, boy.
And so there's a lot of great stuff going on. So.
Wow. Well, that's an incredible schedule. Very varied. I'd love to be a student in one of those classes. I might certainly would learn from all the instruction of the instrument of the voice. And Jazz at Lincoln Center is such a fabulous organization. And Kristen McBride, to me, is just the Renaissance man. He just, I just don't know how he keeps running 365 days.
Definitely, you can join us. Go to Swing University at Jazz at Lincoln Center.
I'm going to do that.
And register to take the class, and your listeners can register.
Well, that's true. I could do that remotely. Well, look, I want to close things out and thank you again. You've shared a lot, and certainly our listeners will be able to learn a lot and enjoy the information. And also, please go to the websites as mentioned, and they will be posted on the final podcast production. Again, Tammy, thank you so much for your time today. I'm so glad that we finally connected. And obviously, positive wishes and karma for everything that moves forward in your life. So thank you again.
Oh, thank you so much for thinking of me and introducing me to your listeners. Music is my mantra, and I try to use it to not only heal others, but also heal myself. So God bless you, and you have a great day.
Thank you.